To understand the human condition, let us begin with the word human. The first part of human is hum, meaning earth. It is the earthen matrix for air, water, and nutrients to support life. In humans, hum is the earthen vessel for ourself to lead a mortal life. The second part of human is manas, meaning mind. What Emerson called overmind, Nietzsche called Ubermind, and Buddhists refer to as Buddha mind. Manas is not the personality's cerebral, subjective, intellectual, rational mind, which we typically associate with the brain. That rational mind is very much part of our hum, our earthen vessel. So Manas is not the rational mind Albert Einstein states should be a faithful servant. Rather, Manas is the intuitive mind Einstein calls a gift we will refer to as Metamind. The metaphysical matrix of self, consciousness, and soul, which facilitates multidimensional experience, a way to be, seek, and know oneself and reality fully via Metamind. A human being, then, is a physical embodiment of the Metamind of Being. In microcosm, we could say a human being consists of two pillars: the physical world we see, the physical vessel of a thinking and feeling hominid on earth, and the metaphysical world we seek, self-evident experiential knowledge of, by conscious experiencing being one with Metamind. A human being is the balanced union of these two pillars, as this ancient earthen vessel from the Andes depicts, the physical self one with the Metamind of Being. As Shakespeare said, to be or not to be is the central question of the human condition, the answer to which is found in the thousands of allegories told throughout the ages, from Adam and Eve to Faust, from Lord of the Rings to Game of Thrones. That we have yet to grasp the answer, practically, comprehensively at every turn in our lives, in all our challenges, endeavors, successes, and failures, is the one reason, a single pillar on which rests the cause of all of humanity's confusion and suffering, and blinds us from knowing ourselves and the world as a conscious experiencing being. How so? A human being consists of a triangulation of hum, manas, and being. In other words, a triune human being. Tri meaning three, un meaning one, that is, three in one. A true human being. Consider the bicycle for a moment. A bike is a practical example of a balanced union of two wheels in perfect alignment, with the rider raised between them forming a triangulation, just like the triune of hum, manas, and being. In this light, a true human being is analogous to a bicyclist. Despite a higher center of gravity, bicycles can be easily balanced and maintain forward momentum by beginners and experts alike, over smooth pavement or the most treacherous terrain, even in extreme conditions, and carry what may seem like impossible loads. Be it for a cross-country trip or just a quick spin around the neighborhood, this humble two-wheeled contraption is far and away the most popular, successful, and abundant vehicle on the planet, and for good reason. For young and young at heart, on your way to work or hard at work, on a mountain or in a sprint to the finish. No matter who you are or where you come from, it is more than likely you have ridden a bicycle at least once in your life, if not on a regular basis. But stop right there. If bicycles are so ubiquitous the world over, populated by physical cyclists, can the same be said of metaphysical cyclists? Are we true human beings with our rational mind and metamind in balanced alignment under the leadership of our being, our true self? To answer that question, let's dig beneath the surface and analyze just how a bicycle works. In a bicycle, the rear wheel follows the front wheel. The front wheel is steered by the cyclist, who ultimately sets the direction of the bike. Likewise, the cyclist provides the drive by pedaling the bike and turning the crank. That driving force is then transferred to the rear wheel, producing traction, literally where the rubber meets the road. This is made possible by the chain, which gives the rear wheel a direct connection to the cyclist. It is precisely a conscious connection to our true self which provides us the gifts of driving force and direction behind our actions, which we can experience consciously as we ride through life a triune human being. But the reality is most people lack this conscious connection to their inner cyclist and have discarded their metaphysical bicycle altogether, and therefore humanity suffers the human condition. The next step in understanding the human condition is this word condition. The first part of condition, con, means with, but it is also slang for confidence artist, one who exploits our naivete via deceit, persuades us to believe their lies. This relates to with, meaning accompanied by or in possession of. The second part of condition, dition, is an archaic term meaning state. And by state, we can mean rule, power, control, dominion, or government. But state also refers to the form or arrangement in which something exists, for instance, the states of matter. The condition of humanity, then, is a state of naivete exploited by persuasive forms of deceit which possess and rule humanity. A true human consists of the five senses and ego mind we experience our physical world with, plus direct knowledge of the metaphysical world we only experience being in a conscious state. The actual human condition overrides conscious experience of being with the ego mind's beliefs and disbeliefs about the metaphysical and physical world because of not being in a conscious state. Genuine knowledge is displaced with endless competing theories, beliefs, opinions, and judgments. An individual unaware of the Metamind of Being is just a lone rational hominid with their psychology exposed to external conditioning and manipulation by egos, our many eyes, the equivalent of psychological malware. The rational hominid is not being. So the question Shakespeare really poses is why? How? From Genesis and Faust to Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, our most revered stories and mythologies show us how temptation, the identification with desire, leads to the fall into hypnosis and ignorance, how that downfall creates confusion, turmoil, and suffering, and how ego blinds us from knowing ourselves and the world as a conscious experiencing being. For instance, we do not realize that we are not in possession of one ego, as modern psychologists believe. Rather, we are possessed by many countless individual egos, psychological malware, all of which present themselves to us as an I. Lust and gluttony, greed and envy, anger and despair, pride and shame, laziness and busyness, fear and control. This cacophony of mechanical, self-interested psychological entities infects our five senses and constitute the ego mind we experience. Each ego presents its desires in the first person, an I. For instance, lust and gluttony express as craving, I want this, or aversion, I don't want that. Pride and shame express as identification, I am this, or rejection, I am not that, which are the foundations of tribalism, sexism, racism, and identity politics. The ego of fear and control may express and affirm a thesis, I believe this, but quickly turns to anger when said thesis is contradicted. They believe that? The 7 kingdoms of Westeros play a dangerous game of thrones to rule the Iron Throne, and in that process cause a great deal of suffering, personified by Ramses Bolton and his pet Reek. Likewise, our many egos play a game of thrones to rule us as our I. We are tempted to identify with and indulge cravings and avoid aversions. Pleasure and pain, us and them, life and death, good and bad. This dialectic hypnotizes our consciousness through the rational mind and makes us ignorant to all but our own blind self-interest on the downward spiral of explosion and implosion. So that an explosion of ego, including temptation, hypnosis, and ignorance, leads to an implosion of life, including suffering, devolution, and not being. Case in point, an explosion of anger can lead to the implosion of a relationship. The non-stop dialectic of ego mind is what creates the cacophony of the busy mind. And yet, the dialectic is an illusion, as much a fabrication as the single false I we call ego, since both sides constitute the 2 aspects of the downward spiral of devolution and not being. It is this single I which divides and conquers us as it does Smeagol and Gollum in Lord of the Rings. Our inner pendulum swinging between irrationality and rationalism, atheism and superstition, chaos and order. On the downward spiral, our ego makes sure it is most precious to us, not only as individuals in microcosm, but in macrocosm as well, where the pendulum swings between the extremes of nationalism and tribalism, corruption and wokeness, extreme right and radical left, blind faith and blind dogma. And the world recently witnessed how an explosion of fear led to an implosion of society, economy, and civil liberty. This, then, is the Eye of Sauron and the Ring of Power. Be it the One Ring or the wheel from Game of Thrones, the dominance hierarchy playing out within our rational animal psychology is a single wheel made of many spokes, many eyes, each blinded to all but its own self-interest. And the single illusory ego they form can be likened to the single seat post of a unicycle. The pendulum swinging between extremes is constantly throwing us off balance, causing inherent instability in our psychology and the world around us. Unicycles have no racks or baskets. With all that life throws at us, we have no choice but to juggle everything ourselves. This, then, is the human condition in a nutshell. We are juggling unicyclists, desperately trying to maintain balance, struggling not to drop the ball. Is it any wonder why many have compared modern life to a circus? And naturally, we admire juggling unicyclists, those who have achieved great heights of fame and fortune, power and influence. In the circus of public opinion and the world stage, those who juggle ever more on ever taller unicycles. But we should always remember that no matter who they are, they struggle to keep all their balls in the air while maintaining balance, just like the rest of us. They agonize over the serious challenges facing the world, and must confront an endless barrage of competing theories and opposing opinions on how best to proceed, all fueled by the endless machinations of egos playing their game of thrones, vying for dominance through blind self-interest, free to play us as they will, since we are so preoccupied juggling life's responsibilities on the downward spiral of devolution and not being. A single pillar which the whole world sits precariously on top of. Is it any wonder why they dream of one day alleviating all this psychological suffering with artificial intelligence and transhumanist technologies? They fail to see their reliance on technology is just extreme unicycling, which will lead to a transhumanist dystopia. The fact that humanity teeters and falls as unicyclists is what keeps us bumping up against the glass ceiling of three-dimensional limitations, such as the limitations of physical science and the rational mind which only believes it knows. Compare that to Metamind, which actually knows. including the more fundamental and foundational metaphysical science, which allows us to harness the potential of fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensional insights. Metamind is the only way forward for humanity to shatter the glass ceiling of physical limitations, and rather than suffer the human condition, harness it by restoring what humanity discarded, which gives the human condition meaning. The third aspect of the human condition comes down to its meaning: to seek AUM. The first part, seek, means to strive for. That is, to seek self-evident experiential knowledge of the objective truth, universal wisdom, and most valued experiences we can strive for. The second part, AUM, is the heart mantra OM. It is the analogous ultimate methodology of life, the meta-paradigm of evolution and devolution at the heart of all phenomena, and the heart mantra OM itself. The meaning of life is for eyes suffering instinctively to seek the analogous ultimate methodology of life. To be a true human being in life. Eyes suffer instinctively, trying to make a better physical world we all strive for in life, whereas Manas suffers eyes consciously, so the metaphysical world free of eyes can help us all seek AUM, self-evident experiential knowledge of the analogous ultimate methodology of life. To be true in life means to be a triune life, 3 in 1, a triune human bicyclist, being perfectly balanced atop Hume and Manas in perfect alignment. Imagine each wheel having its own wheelhouse, rational mind belonging to the physical vessel, metamind belonging to our metaphysical vessel. To get through life, we need both. Like the baskets on a bicycle, each pulls its own weight. But if we rely solely on the rational mind, we're just a tiny boat on the open ocean, easily overwhelmed by the rough waters of stormy seas. That is because the lone rational mind is overrun with psychological malware. Our many egos seek to take control of our wheel, and in their never-ending struggle for dominance, they create the illusory single I we identify as. But the I of the false self is like a unicycle, inherently unstable, with no place for baskets, no way to carry the burdens imposed on us by our many eyes, suffering the human condition. We are left to juggle all our challenges and responsibilities as a unicyclist in the circus of life. All the burdens of life oscillate back and forth through our rational mind, haunted by the problems facing the world, and we're inundated with endless conflicting theories, opinions, and beliefs, with no real way of discerning the objective truth, all fueled by revolutions of the internal dominance hierarchy behind our own blind self-interest, the unicycle of egotism. This is the busy mind, the cause of all our suffering, which divides and conquers us with non-stop voices making rational and irrational statements alike, always as me, myself, and I. It is all blind self-interest, the single pillar of egotism. So while Metamind can help us experience our suffering eyes consciously via the AUM of Life, our ego is identified with eyes suffering, attached to trying to make the world better for ourselves. This is precisely the story of temptation and the fall told in countless myths, ancient and contemporary, which tell of the downward spiral into not being, a state which drives a wedge between us, cutting our rational mind off from metamind, such that we experience eyes unconsciously, so metamind cannot help free us of eyes via the AUM of Life. We end up at the mercy of the downward spirals of devolution. An explosion of ego tempts us with identification with and indulgence of desire, which leads to the implosion of life, including hypnosis, ignorance, and blind egotism. The result is confusion, suffering, devolution, and not being. But from the human immune system and anti-malware software to Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, the analogous ultimate methodology of the upward spiral of evolution is all around us. We need only seek it out and apply it in our lives to reverse the downward spiral of devolution. We begin by observing our lives with whatever self-awareness we may have. We practice mindfulness or self-observation and meditate on the egos we observe. This affords us the possibility of dissolving our egos one at a time via comprehension, catharsis, and liberation, slowly reducing the number and strength of our egos, removing the wedge between us and Metamind, and increasing our capacity for self-awareness. This increases our capacity to practice self-observation and dissolution of the ego, particularly in our rational mind, and facilitate the upward spiral of evolution, the expansion of consciousness, which in turn leads to the synthesis of knowledge in Metamind. This is the AUM of Life. Analogous ultimate methodology. The forces of explosion and implosion on the downward spiral of devolution to not being, balanced against the forces of expansion and synthesis on the upward spiral of evolution to being. The AUM of Life is the meta-paradigm at the heart of all phenomena, from the system protecting our physical body to the systems protecting our technology, from the immeasurably large to the incomprehensibly small. The AUM of Life is the universal spiral ladder, which requires we descend to the next lower rung before we can ascend to the next higher rung. It is both Jacob's ladder and Dante's ladder, the wheel of samsara and the Bhava chakra. It is the Tao, the myths of Theseus and Perseus, and the over 6,500 stories cataloged and codified by Joseph Campbell in his hero's journey. It is the reason we collect experience points to gain levels in games, as introduced by David Arneson and Gary Gygax, and why Carl Jung said, quote, "There is no tree whose branches reach to heaven, whose roots do not reach into hell." And Alexis Carrel said, quote, "Man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor." The AUM of Life is ubiquitous in all the evolving and devolving levels of nature, a fact identified and defined mathematically by Fibonacci in his famous sequence, by Rudolf Steiner in his flow forms of living water, by Nikola Tesla in his Tesla coil, and by Walter Russell in the very foundation of his 4D vortex science. It is at the heart of MIT supercomputers' visualizations of the 4D tesseract or hypercube, and will soon be seen by many individuals seeking their own conscious experience of the opposing spiral forces of the fourth dimension. It is all the AUM of Life, but there is still one piece missing from the puzzle. What is the relationship between Metamind and the rational mind? In the fourth segment of our analysis of the human condition, let's take a closer look at the significance of being Theodore. Theodore consists of two parts. The latter part derives from the Greek dores, meaning gift, as in to receive our gifts with humility and gratitude, and to be a worthy vessel conscious to share our gifts with others is life's greatest gift. The first part of Theodore comes from the Latin theos, meaning God. The Alpha and the Omega, also known as the Logos, which set in motion the immutable laws of evolution and devolution at the heart of all phenomena. The AUM of Life, expressing, receiving, and sharing infinite gifts of Metamind, which we call God. To seek the AUM of Life is to seek to be consciously bringing gifts of Metamind into the world for one and all beings via the AUM of Life. Self-evident experiential knowledge of the analogous ultimate methodology. Reduction of ego in the rational mind and expansion of consciousness in Metamind. If we liken the cosmos to a vast ocean between ports of call, then the Metamind is the cargo ship bringing goods from far off shores. But just like any megaship, a massive seagoing vessel requires a small but powerful tugboat to bring it into port. That tugboat is the physical vessel of rational mind. The container ship is the metaphysical vessel of Metamind. Working together as a true human being, they deliver to the physical world what it is most in need of, what Einstein called gifts, including the gifts of imagination, inspiration, intuition, insight, peace, love, and joy. Einstein called these sacred gifts, and the rational mind which assists in their delivery and distribution, a faithful servant. By extension, then, the physical vessel is likewise a faithful servant, with a sacred duty to deliver sacred gifts of the metaphysical vessel into the world via the faculties available to it, including rational mind. And, through the experience of life through those faculties, the physical vessel is responsible for the reciprocal duty of generating new, self-evident experiential knowledge. To be a true human being contributing to the collective wisdom of the metaphysical world. The only experience of any value to our metaphysical vessel is conscious experience. And conscious experience requires we maintain a conscious connection. In the wheelhouse of our physical vessel is our sacred duty to being, so that in the wheelhouse of our metaphysical vessel we can receive and ship the sacred gifts of being. The essence of that conscious connection is to know ourself as a triune human being. A being whose rational mind follows Metamind, who sets the direction and provides the driving force, which is our job to put into action where the rubber meets the road, via the connection we have to our being, our true self. The linkage in any chain binds us as one, like a pair of wedding bands. To bind is the meaning of the Latin religare and the Sanskrit yug, which are the root words of religion and yoga respectively. And what happens if we break our bond with ourself? We lose our conscious connection. We become unconscious of our true self. In this case, religion is no longer a matter of direct conscious experience of Metamind. Now it becomes a matter of belief in the rational mind. Yoga, likewise, becomes an entirely mental and physical exercise. Sacred symbolism devolves into false idolatry. Allegory devolves into literal interpretation. Mythology, modern or ancient, devolves into mere entertainment. Objective axioms of universal truth devolve into dogmatic adherence to subjective beliefs. We suffer the false self, juggling its own direction, drive, and action. We behave like bumper boats in a water park, identified and attached to theories, opinions, beliefs, dogmas, and subjectivity of rational ego mind, instead of being true tugboats, performing our sacred duty to seek and share the gifts of universal truths, self-evident experiential knowledge, and objectivity of the Metamind of Being. Which do you think is more valuable and more needed in the world of today? It's no accident that one of the world's most famous tugboats was named Theodore. To facilitate the delivery of gifts of Metamind and seek direct conscious experiential knowledge of divinity. To know our true self as a triune human being in microcosm, and to see our world in that light in macrocosm. In doing so, we can truly seek the light of the world. Metamind is ever present and whispering its secrets to us through infinite expressions of the AUM of Life, in the very large and the very small. No matter where we find ourselves, so long as we are cultivating our conscious connection to it, developing the eyes to see and the ears to hear. No matter where our path takes us, AUM is present and active, and so is our metamind. Of course, there are actors in the world interested in augmenting, filtering, and outright replacing our conscious experience of metamind with a virtual reality digital simulation, which they have ironically named the Metaverse. They are, as we speak, conspiring, concocting, and crafting their so-called metaverses filled with virtual spectacles and experiences to captivate our rational mind. They literally want to augment reality of existence as a true human being, convincing you that their dystopian vision of transhumanism is the destiny of humankind. That doubling down on not being is somehow going to equate or be superior to actually being. They seriously believe that faced with all the world's problems, the cacophony of the busy mind, all they need to do is slap a VR headset on us and plunge us into their so-called metaverse to make it all better. Or worse, implant a chip directly into our brains, as if adding complexity to the human condition is somehow going to alleviate our confusion and suffering. When we know from experience that the advent of social media has had a terrible effect on younger generations, especially young women and girls. And they're going to make us pay for it. As always, these supremely powerful and ultra-wealthy actors, utterly enslaved to their own egos, are going to project their enslavement onto humanity by getting inside of our heads, exploiting the dominance hierarchy of egos within us, creating a new breed of 3D virtual reality which is far more enticing and hypnotic than anything ever seen before, further commoditizing devolution and not being. Continuing our march forward into the technological zombie apocalypse, creating a whole new virtual reality filled with desires, concerns, and responsibilities for us to juggle, in addition to the actual real-world challenges and responsibilities we're already struggling to handle. And no doubt the masters of neuropharmacology will be waiting in the wings to medicate all those who can't maintain their balance. This, then, is the exploitation of the rational mind via exacerbation of real suffering individuals in the virtual reality metaverse. The solution is to become one of countless individuals seeking the analogous ultimate methodology. Make a conscious connection to metamind and seek mastery of oneself and all the challenges of life as a triune human being. The conscious exploration, exposition, and application of the actual metaverse via Metamind of Being, delivering insights born in the metaverse into our 3D universe, such as key enlightened enterprises and solutions which support, encourage, and empower individuals seeking the AUM of Life. Individuals seeking analogous ultimate methodology. Ecosystem advanced human habitat. Sound empowered enlightened metaphysical science. Spiritually enlightened education and culture. Social environmental economic valuation. Society engaged electronic democracy. Keys to see the metaphysical reality of our world, the metaphysical nature of ourselves, so we can discover and deliver new keys we seek to a world in desperate need of enlightened enterprises and solutions. Introducing the Attlas Project, a neo-enterprise for the 21st century with but one mandate: to help you see your world in a new light and seek the light of the world. On a firm foundation of true human beings, working diligently to bring their gifts of metamind to you and those you love for the sake of all beings.